Hello everybody. Today we're going to be doing an alternate version of the previous video with making gobos in Blender. Now this time we'll be doing it on 3ds Max. Now this video is going to be relatively short, so if you want to find out more about gobos, go check out my previous video with gobos in Blender. Now with that out of the way, let's get started. So, as a quick rundown, gobos are objects or images placed in front of a light source that basically controls how the light and shadow is emitted. Basically, think of the bat signal where the bat logo is going to be the gobo in that matter. Now in the previous video, we projected fake caustics into our scene in order to recreate this Blade Runner scene. For 3ds Max, we'll be using Arnold to activate our Gobo filter via the Arnold Light Filters, which should already be pre-installed in the software once you downloaded it from the Autodesk website. Now, just like before, we just need to set up our scene. I already have my Caustic Map, and as you can see right here, my model is ready as well. It's basically the exact same model and the exact same Caustic Map that I used back in Blender, so all we really need to do now is finalize our camera and then, of course, add our lights. Now, if you want to copy my camera settings, since I already have one here, here is my settings for it. You can pause the video right here, and then you can just come back once you've set your camera to your liking. Now, to enable depth of field, just click enable depth of field right here, and then set your camera to where you want your focus target to be. So in this case, I'm using a physical camera, and it has a target already here for me. So you just need to set up your camera target to where you want your focus to be focused at, and then we're going to go back to our camera settings right here. So I'm going to go back to our camera and then just play around with our aperture right here. So it's basically the exact same method. If you want a shallow depth of field, the value of your aperture should be closer to 0 but not fully 0. And then if you want a deep depth of field, you're going to need a value greater than 1, or basically above 0, like way above 0. So once you've set up your camera, now we can add our lights. Now, like Blender, our Gobo filter only works on a spotlight, but the same techniques done in Blender when setting up our light in our scene can be done in 3ds Max as well by using the Arnold Light. So let's add our Arnold Light. So we're going to go back to our Create tab and going to go here to our lights. Now we're going to switch over to Arnold and then add our Arnold Light. So select that, and then let's just click anywhere on the scene. So we have here our Arnold Light. Now, by default, our Arnold Light type is going to be set to quad, or commonly known as an area light. So you're basically going to be doing the exact same thing that we did in Blender, where we are going to set our area light first to generally where we want our light to be located, and then switch over to our spotlight, and then do one more adjustment to basically set our scene to how our reference looks. So let me do just that. Okay, I'm generally happy with the position, so we're going to be replacing our quad light now with our spotlight. So we're going to go back here to our Arnold Light, and back here in our shape, we're going to change our type from quad to our spotlight. Okay, so we changed our light to our spotlight now. We're just going to be doing one final adjustment to our light position, and basically how we are going to arrange our light and try and mimic what we have here in our reference right here. So it's top heavy, and there we go. So we're basically going to just mimic this one more time. So let me get back to it, and then we're going to continue on. All right, I'm generally happy with this one for now. Now let's just adjust our intensity and exposure so we can actually see something. So let's just bump this up to 20 and then maybe set our exposure to 10. Okay, So now it's a well-lit scene. Now what I did here when I basically adjusted my Arnold Light, I just tried to mimic what I had in Blender. So I had a cone angle, or in the case of Blender, it's basically the exact same value. We're both using 88.6. And now for the radius, I did a sharper one, because if I try to lower this even more and try to mimic what I had in my Blender, it's basically as you can see right here, our entire scene is gone. So what we want to is try to keep it as sharp as possible and still get a little bit of fade in our shadows right here. But more or less, it's basically the exact same lighting setup that we had in Blender. Now, with our lighting now set up in our environment, let's go and add our gobo. So to do that, let's select our Arnold Light once again, since I'm already selected to it. And then we're going to go to our modifier list. And then in our modifier list, we're just going to type in Arnold and then go for Arnold Gobo filter. So we're going to select that. Okay, so now that we added our Arnold Gobo filter, we just need to click over here to our slide map. Let's just click on none. And then this one is going to open up our material and map browser. Now we're going to type in bitmap, and then we're going to select this one, just the single bitmap right here. It's a general map. Let's just click on that and then click OK. Now, once you did that, we're basically going to try to find our Caustic Map right now. Now, just like in my previous video, you can download the Caustic Map that I'm going to be using in the description down below, as well as the textures that I used for the model. So let's just find my material right here. Okay, so as you can see, you can now actually see our Caustic Map visible in our scene, but the problem is it's a little bit dim, but this is an easy fix by just simply bumping up our intensity right here and even bumping up our exposure. So let's maybe set it to 100 for the intensity, and let's bump up our exposure even more to, let's say, 12 maybe. All right, so there we go. Now we have a well-lit scene and with our caustic fully visible. But as you can see, we have a little bit of a problem here. Now, the basic controls are going to be super simple, so you can easily set the scale of our Caustic Map over here in the placement. So it's scale S and scale T. This is basically just X and Y, so you can just play around with our scale here. So let's bump them up to, let's say, 8. There we go. And as you can see in our little render right here, we can fully see our caustics fully visible in our environment. So that's pretty much it for our Gobo filter. Now the Wrap S and Wrap T over here, you can actually use this, but there's really not much any big difference. Now, based on my previous testing on this one, by changing the Wrap T to mirror, we can actually replicate what we did back in Blender with the geometry node and then adding the parametric input to our rotation in the mapping node. Now, this is basically the exact equivalent of that, I can say. So if you want to do it, it's over there. So that's basically it. That's basically it as far as Gobo filters go in 3ds Max. Now, of course, just like in Blender, you can still play around with our Caustic Map right here. We can change our colors. So just like before, we're going to be having a standard and our complex variations, but more or less, it's actually pretty standard. It's just going to be using one node for 3ds Max. So let's start with that. Now for our first variation, the standard one, of course, this is our main standard one. Now what we're going to do is we're going to be changing our colors when it comes to our Caustic Map. So we're going to open up our material editor by pressing M. Let's just open up our material editor. Let's press M. There we go. So here we go. This is our material editor. And then let's add a new view for this one so we can actually focus on one single new shader graph right here. Now, for our standard variation, when you're going to be changing the colors of your Caustic Map, let's of course select our Caustic Map right here, which is this one, causticmap.png, and then we're going to drag it over to our Slate material editor. And then just click on instance and then click OK. And there we go. Now, you can still control your tiling over here, but personally, you're going to want to do that over here in your placement settings in the Arnold Gobo filter. So what we're going to do now to change our color, we're going to be searching for our Arnold. Actually, no, not Arnold. We're going to just search for color correct. Now, the one that you're going to want to choose right here is, since we're using Arnold, let's use this one right here, maps-arnold-color. So let's just drag it over here. And there we go. That's the one that we're going to be using for both standard and complex variations. Now, we're just going to plug in our Caustic Map right here to the input channel of the color correct. And then, so we can actually see the changes that we're doing, we're going to plug in our new color correct map here to our slide map of our Arnold Gobo filter. And then click on Instance, click OK. There we go. So that's basically it. We can now change our colors. Now, how do we do that? It's super simple. Just click on here to our multiply and then go nuts with the color. So let's say maybe we want a blue tint. There we go. So we can now play around with our colors. So that is how that's how the standard variation of our Arnold Gobo filter goes. If you want to change or play around more with light filters, or basically changing the color filter of your light. Now you can also play around with the gamma if you want to. If you want it more brighter, you can play around with all of these, the saturation, the contrast, exposure, everything, just to see how much change that you can do. Really, there's no mistake that can be done here, so go nuts, really. So that's basically it. That's it for the standard variation and how you can change your color. Now for the complex variations, it's actually, again, as I said, it's still technically a standard variation because we're still going to be using this exact same color correct. Or if you want, you can add a new color correct. So let's just add a new color correct map. And then let's plug it in here as well. And then maybe let's use this one for our new slide map right here. So same exact thing. Now, what we can do for this second color correct, or basically our complex variation, is, again, if you try to look at our reference right here, you can see that some portions of our light have a little bit of a fade and have dim parts, basically. Basically, it has dim parts right here, which we can actually do, but to a certain extent, unlike in Blender, which we can fully utilize the color ramp to basically filter out some parts of these that's basically being read through the Caustic Map. So to do that, now if you're going to be using the exact same Caustic Map that I'm using, this is the exact value that you're going to want to change, here. So in our contrast, we're going to be changing our value from 1.0 to 1.1. And as you can see right here, if you look close at our render, the dark portions, or basically the dark shaded areas of our Caustic Map, are starting to fade out, but it's a little bit too strong. So that's basically it. You just need to change it to 1.1. Now, why 1.1? Because as you can see right here, if we go back to 1.0, the shades of light right here, the rays of light right here are still too sharp. But if you go to 1.2, the problem here, now they're fully gone. You just see darkness you just basically see darkness everywhere. Just the strands of light is remaining in our scene. So 1.1 is the solid value right here, which is pretty okay, I guess, in a certain extent. It's not as powerful as using the color ramp in Blender, but you get what we get, right? So that's basically it for our complex variation right here. Now, that's when it comes to the effect that we're doing right here. Of course, we can still change the color right here, but another trick that you can do is basically playing around with our filter mode right here for our Arnold Gobo filter. So let's set our color to a bluish tint right here, and then we're going to go back to our Arnold Gobo filter, and we're going to change our attribute, our filter mode right here, from blend to mix. Now, as you can see right here, our Gobo is basically gone. So to basically go get our Gobo back, let's just adjust our intensity right here, and then slowly but surely you can see our Gobos coming back. And as you can see right here, we can easily play around with the color of our light strands, or if you want to go even more powerful, set your value to 1, which is the max density, the max value for our density right here. But personally, I just go to somewhere around 0.98 or 0.99. But really, the creativity is all you. It's up to you how you're going to want to play around with this kind of feature. Now, the thing that I do here is by setting our filter mode to mix, you can actually play around with your Arnold Light, your main Arnold Light right here, by simply changing around with the colors. So our tint back then was blue, so maybe we can set it to yellow to get a green color right here. So that's another thing that you can easily do with Arnold Gobo filter right here by setting it again, once again, to mix. And then let's play around with our density right here. So yeah, as you can see, basically it's a super simple color change right here. Now that's pretty much it for the standard and complex variations for 3ds Max. It's super simple. It's personally, it's not going to be as powerful as Blender when it comes to changing, but when it comes to the simplicity when adding our Gobo filters, it's definitely going to be much better than Blender, because literally only need one Arnold color correct. So again, that's basically it for Gobos in 3ds Max. Now, one final touch that we can do, just like what we did in Blender, is adding our volumetrics. So let's try to enable our active shade right here. And let's see how our render right here. Let's actually disable that. Let's go to our Arnold Render view, and then let's play with our render right here. And as you can see right here, we can actually see some volumetrics in our scene. You can see the rays of light coming from above. Now, this is a super easy addition to our scene, so let's just get on with it. Let's close that up. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go to our rendering and then go to our render setup. Now, in our render setup, we're going to go to our Arnold renderer. Then we're going to scroll down right below right here. You can see environment, background, and atmosphere. And right here, let's just clear this one out, and then let's go add a new one. Let's go in our atmosphere. Let's just click here to no map. Let's click on that. And then we're going to search for atmosphere volume. And then as you can see right here, atmosphere volume, let's click on that and then click OK. Now, once we've added that one in, let's try to render this right now. Now, as you can see, there's really nothing happening yet, because what we have here in our atmosphere volume is our density is set to 0. So our density is set to 1, so we can't actually see anything. So let's just open our material editor. So let's press M right here. Let's just add a new view so we can have a new view right here. All right, let's just drag our atmosphere volume right here. And then click instance, click OK. And as you can see here, it's actually not 1, it's actually 0, so there's no density whatsoever in our scene. Now, so let's see what happens if we try and add our density right here. Let's set it to 1. And then as you can see here, the density is way too dense. So let's just try to lower this one to, let's say, 0.01. And as you can see here, we have volumetrics. But the problem here is it's still way too dense. So to fix this one, we can easily play around with our eccentricity. Let's just bump that up to try and lessen the amount of rays of light we can actually see in our scene. And as you can see here, at let's say 0.95, there we go. We have a well-reduced density right here, and then we can still see the rays of light that we have here up in our scene right here. So it's a pretty easy fix. Let's maybe set it to 1. Let's see how it looks. Okay, it's none. So let's just not set it to 1. Let's just set it to 0.95. Or maybe we can still go higher. Let 0.98, maybe. Okay, 0.98 is a pretty well-tamed density right here. So there we go. That's how easy it is to add our volumetrics. Now, another thing that we can do is, by default, if we don't have a denoiser right here, so let me just remove that, and then let's just wait for this one to render out, we can actually see a little bit of noise. So let's just wait for this to render out. Actually, let me just play around with the render setup. I think never mind, it's set to 1280 by 720. Okay, so let's just wait for our render to finish, and then you can see that this is a very noisy scene if we had volumetrics enabled. So let's just finish the render and we'll get back to it. Okay, now that our render is finished, and as you can see, as I've told you before, it's a very noisy scene. If you can see at the shadows, very noisy, and definitely the most obvious ones here is you can see a lot of fireflies, or basically noise that's coming from the light. Now, the easiest way that you can fix this is definitely, the common solution if you want to fix this is, of course, bumping up our samples right here in our Arnold render setup. Close that one. There we go. As you can see here, we can actually play around with our samples right here. You can bump up your camera samples, your diffuse samples, as well as your specular right here to try and reduce the noise that we have here in our scene. But really, the easiest way that we can actually reduce our noise is right here in our Arnold render view. So let's just back this out. And then as you can see right here, if you close that up, by default, this is what you're gonna see for your Arnold render view. But if you want to enable what I just did right there, you just click on this settings icon right here, the display settings, and then we're gonna go here to our post. This is basically our compositor right here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna click on add, and then we're gonna add the noiser optics, and then that's basically it. And as you can see, the noise is entirely gone for our scene. So you now have a very clean render for you to save, or basically to showcase for your post. And there we go. That's basically it for this video. So I hope you can actually recreate this scene in in 3ds Max. So go have fun and then try your best to recreate your scene and even do better than mine. So I'll be seeing you guys in the next video.